The disco ball was spinning above 300 bodies when Donna Summer collapsed in the bathroom. And for 17 minutes, nobody noticed the Queen of Disco was dying just 20 feet away. It was May 12, 1978, and while Andy Warhol and Liza Minnelli danced to her own voice singing Last Dance through the massive speakers, Donna lay unconscious on cold marble tiles, her lips turning blue. The white powder slipped into her drink wasn't cocaine, but something far more sinister, something that would take investigators 3 years to identify. But before we reveal what really happened in that bathroom and who wanted the Queen of Disco silenced, we need to understand what Donna Summer was running from that night. If you want to discover more untold stories about Donna Summer and the secrets of the disco era, please subscribe to our channel and join us on this journey through music history's most fascinating mysteries. 3 weeks before that fateful night, Donna Summer had stood in Neil Bogart's office at Casablanca Records and threatened to walk away from everything. The pressure had been building for months since I Feel Love had transformed her from a disco novelty act into a cultural phenomenon. She was recording 3 albums simultaneously, performing 6 nights a week, doing promotional appearances during the day, and trying to maintain some normal life for her 7-year-old daughter Mimi, who was beginning to ask difficult questions about why other children's mothers didn't moan orgasmically on the radio. The love to love you baby stigma still haunted her, made her feel dirty even as it made her rich. And the new material with Giorgio Moroder was pushing boundaries even further. Studio 54 had become her refuge and her prison, a place where she could disappear into the crowd while being the center of attention. Steve Rubel treated her like royalty, always had the best table waiting, and the club had become the one place where she felt she could let down her guard. But May 12, 1978 was different from the beginning. Her manager had warned her about coming out that night, had mentioned death threats coming into the office, angry letters from religious groups who called her music demonic, from women who blamed her for corrupting their husbands, from men who seemed to think her songs gave them ownership of her body. She had dismissed it all as the usual craziness that came with fame. The interior of Studio 54 that night was particularly spectacular, transformed for a private party whose guest list read like a who's who of everyone who mattered in New York. Donna was wearing a custom Halston dress, midnight blue with silver sequins that caught the light with every movement, cut dangerously low in front and backless. She had chosen it deliberately, wanted to feel powerful and in control, wanted to remind everyone that she was the Queen of Disco, untouchable, unstoppable, eternal. But as she moved through the crowd, accepting kisses and compliments, she felt increasingly disconnected from her own body, as if she were watching herself from somewhere above. Giorgio Moroder was supposed to meet her at midnight to discuss the new album. She found him at his usual spot near the DJ booth, deep in conversation with a man she didn't recognize, someone in an expensive suit who looked out of place, whose eyes were cold and calculating. Giorgio introduced him as a potential investor with connections in Europe, but there was something in Giorgio's voice, some warning she couldn't decipher, that made her decline the drink the stranger offered. It was a decision that would save her life and nearly end it. Because the drink she accepted 10 minutes later, from a waiter she thought she recognized, was the one that had been prepared specifically for her, doctored with a powerful sedative mixed with a hallucinogen that hadn't even hit the streets yet. The first sign something was wrong came about 15 minutes after she drank the champagne, a sudden wave of dizziness that made the room tilt and spin. Donna had experimented with drugs before, but she had never felt anything like this, a sensation of her consciousness fragmenting into pieces, reality becoming fluid and unreliable. The faces around her began to melt and reform, familiar features becoming grotesque masks that leered and laughed, and the music that had always been her refuge became a physical assault, each beat hammering into her skull. She tried to tell someone, tried to grab a friend's arm, but her words came out as gibberish, sounds without meaning that made people laugh because they thought Donna Summer was just being fabulous and outrageous. The bathroom seemed miles away, even though it was only across the dance floor, and the journey there became an odyssey through a nightmare landscape, where every face became threatening. The bathroom door was heavy, heavier than it should have been, but she finally got it open and stumbled inside, into harsh fluorescent lighting that made her retch. There were two other women at the mirror, and they turned to stare at Donna Summer, at the mess she had become in 20 minutes. Mascara running down her face, dress torn at the shoulder, breathing in ragged gasps. What happened in the next 17 minutes would remain largely mysterious, pieced together from forensic evidence and Donna's own fragmented memories. At some point, Donna Summer collapsed on the bathroom floor, her body convulsing in what emergency room doctors would later identify as a severe reaction to a drug cocktail that should have killed her. Her heart rate dropped to dangerous levels, her breathing became almost undetectable, and her body temperature plummeted. The bathroom floor was cold marble, and Donna lay there in her torn Halston dress, while 20 feet away, 300 people danced to her own voice, singing about survival. The cleaning woman who found her was a 58-year-old Jamaican immigrant named Claudette Williams, who had worked at Studio 54 for 6 months. Nothing had prepared her for the sight of Donna Summer's blue lips and still body. Claudette's scream brought security running, brought Steve Rubel himself pushing through the bathroom door with his face gone white, brought paramedics who weren't supposed to be called because celebrities didn't die at Studio 54. The decision to call an ambulance instead of trying to handle it privately probably saved Donna's life, because Roosevelt Hospital had the equipment to deal with the exotic drug combination in her system. The police investigation was hampered by Studio 54's culture of secrecy and by the fact that so many people in the club that night were engaged in illegal activities. The waiter who had served Donna the champagne disappeared and was never found. The glass she had drunk from was lost in the chaos. What investigators did reveal was that Donna Summer had received at least 3 credible death threats in the weeks leading up to May 12, 1978, letters specific enough to be taken seriously, but vague enough that no one could identify the sender. The drug that nearly killed her was eventually identified as a combination of Quaaludes and an experimental hallucinogen called DOM, also known as STP. The combination was particularly dangerous because both drugs suppressed breathing and heart rate, and the amount in Donna's system suggested whoever prepared the dose had intended for her to die. But despite months of investigation, no one was ever charged with attempting to murder Donna Summer, and the case was eventually shelved as unsolvable. Donna Summer spent 4 days in Roosevelt Hospital under an assumed name, recovering from the poisoning and the psychological trauma. Her family was told she had food poisoning, her record label was told she had exhaustion, and the press was fed a story about a minor allergic reaction. But Donna knew the truth, knew that someone had tried to kill her and had nearly succeeded, and that knowledge changed something fundamental in how she saw her career. She stopped going to Studio 54, stopped accepting drinks from anyone she didn't know personally, started traveling with security that made her friends joke she thought she was the president. The incident also marked a turning point in Donna's relationship with the disco genre itself. She started talking to her producers about moving in a different musical direction, incorporating rock and new wave influences that would distance her from the disco label. The Bad Girls album that came out the following year reflected this shift, showcasing a harder edge, songs about the dark side of nightlife that felt like a direct response to what had happened at Studio 54. Critics noted the change in tone, the anger that had replaced the breathy sensuality of her earlier work. But they didn't know the real story behind that anger. Various theories emerged about who had tried to kill Donna Summer and why. Some believed it was a jealous rival who saw eliminating the competition as the only way to reclaim the spotlight. Others pointed to organized crime connections, suggesting Donna had witnessed something she shouldn't have. The most disturbing theory was that someone within Casablanca Records itself had ordered the hit, either because Donna was becoming too independent or because she knew too much about financial irregularities that could bring down the label. The theory that may have been closest to the truth involved the stranger Giorgio Moroder had been talking to that night, the man in the expensive suit with cold eyes. Investigators were never able to identify him definitively, but several people remembered seeing the stranger following Donna through the crowd, remembered him talking to the waiter who served her the poisoned champagne, remembered him leaving immediately after the ambulance arrived, moving quickly like someone who knew exactly what was about to happen. When Donna Summer finally returned to performing 6 weeks later, she was a changed artist, harder and more guarded. She opened at the Universal Amphitheater in Los Angeles, and from the moment she stepped on stage, the audience could feel the difference. The vulnerability that had made her early performances so captivating was gone, replaced by a fierce determination. She performed Last Dance with an intensity that brought the audience to tears, not because of romantic lyrics, but because of what it represented, a woman who had literally danced with death and lived to tell about it. Backstage, friends noticed other changes, the way Donna kept her back to walls, the way she flinched at sudden movements, the way she insisted on inspecting every drink and food item. Her dressing room had become a fortress. Some thought she was overreacting, but those who knew what had really happened understood her caution was justified. The person who had tried to kill her had never been caught, which meant the threat was ongoing. In 2003, 25 years after the incident, a former Studio 54 employee came forward with new information, motivated by terminal illness and a desire to clear his conscience. His testimony suggested the poisoning had been ordered by record executives who felt threatened by Donna's growing independence and her plans to start her own label. She had been talking about taking control of her masters, about owning her publishing, about helping other artists escape predatory contracts. This move toward autonomy was seen as dangerous precedent. The plan had been to scare her, to remind her of her vulnerability. But whoever prepared the dose had either miscalculated or deliberately tried to ensure she never woke up. Donna never publicly confirmed this version of events, but in private conversations, she acknowledged it matched her own suspicions. The knowledge that her near-death experience had been a calculated business decision, rather than random violence, confirmed her worst fears about the industry. She became even more protective of young artists, more vocal about the need for better contracts and artist-friendly business practices. When Donna Summer died on May 17, 2012, from lung cancer, her family found a sealed envelope marked, "To be opened after my death," that contained a detailed account of what had happened that night at Studio 54, including names and theories and evidence she had collected over the years but had been too afraid to make public while alive. The document painted a picture of an industry far more corrupt and dangerous than most people realized, where threats and violence were routine tools for maintaining control. The night at Studio 54 when Donna Summer nearly died was not just a random tragedy, but a pivotal moment that exposed the violence lurking beneath the glamorous surface of the music industry. It was the night when the Queen of Disco learned that crowns are heavy and dangerous to wear, that visibility makes you a target. But it was also the night that transformed LaDonna Gaines from a talented singer into a survivor, from a performer into an activist. And perhaps that is the real legacy of that terrible night. Not the horror of what happened, but the strength of what came after. The proof that even disco queens can refuse to dance to someone else's tune, can survive attempts to destroy them, can transform tragedy into art, and fear into power, and near death into renewed life.